Hey Philly, this is Matt Katz, executive producer of CityCast Philly. I'm popping in to let you know that we are hiring a senior accounts executive to lead advertising sales in our market. If you have a track record in sales, if you've got strong relationships with local businesses, if you're into podcasts and the news, if you live here, and if you love this town, we want you. Join our team and make a real impact by connecting Philly businesses with our incredible community of listeners. Apply now at citycast.fm/jobs.
Today on CityCast Philly, it's the Friday News Roundup. Did we finally get snow? City Council delays a vote on the Sixers arena proposal, and drivers beware of some new bike laws. It's Friday, December 6th. I'm Trenae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Joining me this week is Matt Katz, executive producer here at CityCast Philly. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Trenae. A lot to talk about, huh?
A lot to talk about. But first, I want to talk about something new I learned about you. In the coffee episode yesterday, you love mochas. What are you drinking this morning?
I do love mochas. I just do the black cup of coffee in the morning, but like the mocha in the afternoon, which is basically like hot chocolate with caffeine. That's my go-to as a reward if I feel like I deserve to spend $6 on basically a child's drink with a dash of coffee.
Well, I've got coffee with some oat milk because, oat milk, it's less rough on my stomach. 4 pumps of pumpkin spice, all thanks to the Filler Club, where we're recording this week. And listen, I really needed this warm drink because it's literally snowing right now. The first snow of the season.
I mean, it was a hot Halloween, and now we have an early December snowfall. It's very strange.
I know. Now, this is not the snow like the blizzard of 96, but on Wednesday night, I heard some tapping on my roof. I was like, hello, winter? Is that you? It sounded like rain. So I rushed to peek through my window, but it was just like hail or something. So
I think this means that we're going to get a white Christmas, Trenae. It must mean that. We're like 2.5 weeks away. Snow's already tapping at your door.
Here's the thing, though. It's going to be annoying for travel, and especially, in about a few weeks, everyone's going to be flying all over the place around the country. And I just hope that the weather doesn't delay or mess up travel at the airport. So that's the only thing. I know that pisses people off.
Yeah, that really pisses people off. And travel on the roads. I mean, you don't want to be hitting Kelly Drive and then 76 when it's, snowing outside.
All right. Well, let's talk about some other news happening around the city. We're still talking about the Sixers arena proposal, which, again, if you don't know, this is that $1.3 billion proposal to build a new stadium downtown. Here's the latest from this whole saga. Representatives for the Sixers are now negotiating with City Council on possibly increasing the community benefits agreement. This is that lump sum of money that would go to supporting the surrounding community near this proposed arena. Right now, as it stands, the Sixers pledge $50 million to the CBA. But while many community groups oppose the arena, they also call for an increase in the CBA. And I'm talking like a bump up to $300 million, which they say could be like a good minimum. So $50 to $300 million, that's a big difference.
I said a few weeks ago on the Friday News Roundup that I thought that if this arena happened, and it does seem like we're getting a bit closer to it becoming a reality, that number, that $50 million community benefits agreement number, this is money that's supposed to go to the neighboring community, particularly to businesses in Chinatown, that number would move. And it looks like that number is moving. They've delayed the vote, the final votes on this in City Council, because apparently they're negotiating behind closed doors some elements of this agreement. And one of the key things they're negotiating is how much more the community should get in exchange for this arena. So we're at $50 million. Councilman Mark Squilla, who supports this proposal, he said it's going to have to go up at least $10 million. So the number I keep thinking about, Trenae, is Joel Embiid, the star of the Sixers, who is basically barely playing this year because he's banged up. He makes $51.4 million just this year for basically not playing. So the community benefits agreement has got to go above that number, I think. Right?
Interesting. Well, I also want to point out, did you see the ticket prices for the Sixers? I know we talked about that on the show a couple of Friday News Roundups ago, but those prices were $5. There's
nuts.
no way that is not being considered in these negotiations.
They're like, we can't afford to to spend more money on the community benefits agreement because we're basically giving away tickets for people to go see the Sixers because we've put an unwinnable product on the court. Is that basically what they're saying? Maybe they're tanking their season and they're going to cry that they're broke and therefore they can't give any more money to Chinatown. Maybe that's the whole scheme.
Oh,
here.
I hope not. I don't think it's like that. But it's just interesting. It's all interesting.
Yes.
I read in the Inquirer this week that Council President Kenyatta Johnson announced that vote that they postponed is now being scheduled for next Wednesday, December 11th. And I just want to keep this whole timeline. Today is Friday, December 6th. This will happen next Wednesday, this vote. And then they have to figure all of this out by December 19th because that's the last day council meets before they go on winter break.
And they do have to figure it out by then because the team said that that's their deadline is the end of the year in order to be able to get this project built by 2031, which is when their lease at the Wells Fargo Center expires. But it does seem to me that, if it's kicked into January, that probably would still be okay. Although the council does seem to be taking this deadline seriously. And it does seem like, December 19th really is the date to look at. And also, Trenae, it looks like they have the votes, right? I mean, are you reading the tea leaves and thinking that this is probably gonna happen? It just doesn't seem like there's enough council members who are opposed to this.
Yeah, that's a good point. Speaking of that, I spoke with at-large councilmember Rue Landau about where she stands on this whole issue. She's pushed back on this, again, because of that CBA, that community benefits agreement. She opposes the proposal of the arena. But you'll hear more next week. And we talk about the Sixers, we talk about her first year in office and what it's been like and some other issues that she's working on in the coming weeks.
Yep. And we're going to definitely do some more shows on this story. One interesting tidbit before we move on to something else, Trenae, that I noticed is that the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation, they have a big wish list for where this money that the Sixers would pay in a community benefits agreement, where it should go. They have a $163 million list. And one piece of that is that they want the old police department administration building, the
roundhouse.
Yeah. Which is sort of on the other side of Chinatown. They want that transferred to the Chinatown community for a social housing project. So that's just another interesting bit of this. We could see a lot of horse trading in the closing weeks of this deal. And, that part of Center City could end up looking a lot different based on the decisions that the politicians are making in the coming weeks.
We've got more news happening around Philly after the break. All right, there's been a lot of other news stories unfolding this week. I think everyone's kind of in that end of the year crunch to get things done. Matt, there's a new bike law that got signed this week, right?
Yeah, that's right. Mayor Sherrell Parker signed this law to make it illegal or subject to a big, massive parking ticket fine for parking or even just standing in a bike lane. Not like standing like a person standing, but the vehicle standing. So that means you are no longer in the city of Philadelphia allowed to pull over into a bike lane to drop something off, to pick somebody up. And I've been really watching this whole issue as it's unfolded because it's really going to affect, maybe more than anywhere else, the Pine Street and Spruce Street bike lanes in Center City, the ones that go east and west. I use these often, and I'm just as annoyed as any other biker when you have to like swerve out of the bike lane because someone's parked there, go into traffic, and then kind of like dodge the traffic and then move back into the bike lane.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from that perspective, a welcome development. On the other hand, if you're elderly, and I've heard these arguments, if you're elderly, you live in the middle of a block, you need to drop off a package, you need to get dropped off because you don't necessarily have a lot of mobility. Maybe an Uber pulls over for a moment to let you into your house. This then becomes a big issue, right? I mean, should an Uber driver really get a ticket for that? Should somebody who lives on the block and really kind of needs to get off in front of their house really get a ticket for that? And will it be able to be enforced? Will the PPA be out there really enforcing this? So certainly a win for advocates of bike safety in the city. Certainly a concern for people who live on blocks with bike lanes. I did see one tidbit in the Inky from our friend Tom Fitzgerald, a transportation reporter there, and he said the city's transportation department is separately in the process of proposing changes that would protect bike lane users on Spruce and Pine with concrete curbs. So there'd be like a real like separation for the bike lanes, which would really then make it impossible to park in a bike lane. But at the same time, they want to provide loading zones across the street for residents of the neighborhood. So might really be a great potential compromise here. And I'm hoping it's safe for everyone and also doesn't inconvenience the disabled and the elderly who need access to their homes.
This has been a real big issue for years now here in the city. For several months now, I've noticed other places in the city, like I'm thinking 33rd Street. If you're coming from West Philly going into like Strawberry Mansion, Brewerytown, they've got these cones placed to protect or to separate the drivers and the cyclists. So I want to see more of that, especially those that reflect at night. I know that it's, a big problem for visibility to see folks on bikes. But yeah, I'm wondering if this law extends to other blocks in the city.
It's all bike lanes in the city, but I believe the fines are going to be higher on Pine and Spruce in the Center City bike lanes. But yes, it applies citywide. Also, did you know that what this bill is unofficially called? This is like what they've been calling it in the news.
What?
It's Get Out the Bike Lane Bill. Like, this is what they call it, which is so funny to me because this is literally what people yell at cars parked in the bike lane. Get out the bike lane. So I'm glad we are, applying that real life truth to our legislation. Very funny.
We've got more news after this break. So for the first time in Philly's history, a street will be renamed after a Black woman. You know the street Taney Street, which is believed to have been named after Roger Taney, the Supreme Court justice who ruled that freed slaves in free states weren't really free and Black people couldn't be citizens of the United States. So now it's been renamed Caroline LeCount Street.
Yep. This has been very exciting for my family because several years ago, my daughter's elementary school class successfully petitioned the school district to change the name of their school because of the name of the school. It was Chester Arthur School. Chester Arthur, when he was president of the United States, signed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which is considered the most racist immigration law and American history. So her class had petitioned the school district to change the name. They won, and then they had a vote in the community and in the school to rename it for another person and another historical figure in Philadelphia's past. And there were 3 finalists, and the one we supported in our house was Caroline LeCount. We lost that bid to have her name as the new name of my daughter's school, but we now know so much about her, so I now can give you a brief history lesson on Caroline LeCount. She is so interesting. I was a little bit disappointed because the news reports about the street naming, some of them just led with the fact that she was the widow of Octavius Catto, who was a legendary civil rights activist, murdered on Election Day in 1871 in Philadelphia.
His statue is outside of City Hall.
Correct. Exactly right. But she was so much more than just having been attached to this man. She was a extraordinary civil rights activist in her own right, almost 100 years before Rosa Parks. Almost 100 years. She was our Rosa Parks here in Philly. She tried to board a streetcar at 11th and Lombard in the 1860s. She was refused a ride. She went to court, lost her case, then went back to court with a copy of the law that she said allowed her to be on that streetcar, despite the fact that she was a black woman in the city of Philadelphia. And she won. She won. And then she ran a school, not just for children, but it was also for adults, for undereducated freed slaves. The school's at 20th and Lombard. She ran it from 1879 to 1911. Just extraordinary mark that she left on this city. She came from a really interesting family. Her father was an undertaker and would hide slaves fleeing the South in coffins in Philadelphia. So it is just wonderful that more than 100 years after she ran the school in Philly, that she's going to have a street named after her, which is very actually close to where her old school was. Just a few blocks away there's a Taney Street at by 26 near Lombard. So cheers to Caroline LeCount. Very glad that she's going to be commemorated forever in the city of Philadelphia.
Yes, this is historic. All right. Before we wrap up the Friday News Roundup, let's talk about what we're doing this weekend. Matt, you got plans?
I'm going up to New York for the 126th Pennsylvania Society dinner.
Ooh, this sounds fancy.
I'm not doing that. Nobody invited me.
Oh, okay.
Did you know about this thing?
No.
So it's one of the stranger events on the Philadelphia social calendar every year, because it is all about Philly and Pennsylvania, but it is not in Philly. It's in Midtown Manhattan. They've been doing this dinner forever, every year at this time, and it's when Pennsylvania politicians and lobbyists and muckety-mucks and hangers-on, they all go up to New York and party for this weekend. There's this dinner that is technically a charity for high school scholarships in Philly, but the real action apparently is in the parties hosted by political consultants and lobbyists and lawyers around this dinner, before and after this dinner. So I like to read, the Inquirer always sends a couple of reporters up, so I always like to read the dispatches from this dinner, because it's the gossip and who's aligned with who and who's whispering about running for governor or senator. So something to keep an eye on. Next year, Trenae, we should go to this dinner and see what's going on.
Nice. Okay. I'm waiting for my invitation.
Do it. Maybe we don't need an invitation. I just show up and set up our mics and do a CityCast Philly episode right from this dinner.
Well, Matt, maybe we can get tickets, but there's so much other fun stuff you can do in Philly this weekend, like the Toyota Big 5 Classic at the Wells Fargo on Saturday, December 7th. If you love Philly sports teams that play basketball, this one is for you. Penn, Drexel, LaSalle, St. Joe's, Villanova, and my Temple Owls are playing in this tournament. So that should be fun. I think this is cool because if you're from Philly, you date someone from Philly, you talk to anyone from Philly, you probably know someone that went to at least one of these schools. And so we take a lot of pride in our Philly colleges. I'm also excited for the free Manayunk Jolly Trolley. This is an actual trolley that's decked out with holiday spirit that drives up and down Main Street, making stops at businesses in Manayunk. You can catch a ride now through December 21st on Thursdays and Fridays from 5 to 9 and Saturdays 1 to 9 p.m.
I got one more free thing before you go for our listeners.
Okay.
They moved a second version of the Rocky statue to the top of the Art Museum steps.
I saw that.
Yeah, to what many Philadelphians would say its rightful place at the top of the Art Museum steps. So there's the original statues on the bottom, obviously, right next to the steps. And that's where everybody goes because the people who were precious about fine art didn't want the statue up at the top of the steps where it had been for a little bit of time. So it's been since 2006 at the bottom of the steps, but there's a second statue that's owned by Sylvester Stallone. It's a second casting of the same statue. So he shipped it up from Florida. And now until the end of the year, because of Rocky Fest, and you did that great piece on Rocky Fest and the all the Rocky related events happening in the city this week. So because of Rocky Fest, they shipped up this second statue and it's up at the top of the steps. So now you can do like the movie, you can run the steps and throw your arms in the air and be like Sly Stallone. So definitely going to get out there. I don't know about this weekend, but certainly before it leaves at the end of the month. I think it's great.
Yeah, and if you need even more recommendations, you got to listen back to our December events episode. That's in our feed. All right, Matt Katz, thank you so much for joining me on this Friday News Roundup.
Thanks, Trenae. Have a great weekend.
You too. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. Our executive producer is Matt Katz. Our producers are Abby Fritz, Lizzie Goldsmith, and Elizabeth Kama. Our Hey Philly newsletter editor is Ava Wynowski. And our host is me, Trenae Nuri. Music is by Philly's own Interminable, with additional music from All the Kimonos. If you enjoyed this week of episodes, please tell a friend. And also tell your favorite barista. Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Philly. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend and be safe, y'all. Bye.